Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our podcast. Today, you guys, we are celebrating by saying hooray to flat. Ula, honey, what is the flat that we're talking about that I've been experiencing for the last handful of weeks?
It is the feeling of flat, the emotion of flat.
Yeah. So actually, I have not been experiencing this the past handful of weeks. I've been experiencing the opposite of flat, which is totally on the deep end of all the shitty feelings that we try to not feel in our lives, from, depressed, not believing shit's going to work out, questioning, a lot of anxiety, all that kind of stuff. And then I got to a place, when was it, honey? This week? Or last week, when all of a sudden I realized that one morning, instead of feeling really shitty inside and overwhelmed by everything, I actually just felt nothing. And we texted back and forth, and that is where hooray to flat came from, because feeling nothing is a better feeling state than feeling despair or feeling like shit. So we're going to dive in today on what flat really provides you as an opportunity when you have been through the roller coaster of all your emotions, and some ways that you can actually move into this better feeling state of flatness so that you also can say hooray to flat with us. So take it away, honey.
Mm-hmm. So flat in itself, it sounds kind of flat and boring, but isn't it much better to feel bored and kind of nothing than be completely exhausted by these emotions that really just kind of rip through your entire body? Those what we call negative emotions. These emotions are important too, but what we call negative emotions, they tend to take a hold of us a lot stronger than those really good feeling emotions like joy and expansion and love and all those wonderful things that we all experience every once in a while. But as a society, we learn that those moments are just fleeting, and there's always something bad happening around you. And if you look at the news, the newspapers, social media, that's pretty much all you see. Shit. Like just the entire world just gone off the deep end, and there's no return. So when you are able to move just a little bit, and I think we talked about this on our last episode too, that feeling better doesn't mean that you jump from feeling fear or anxiety. You don't jump to feeling overjoyed and love. You can move little by little. And once you get to flat, that is actually the tipping point. When your default becomes flat, you start to move more onto those good feelings. I don't know if that's a good word, but it's good feeling. That's what came to my mind. So flat is a place of neutrality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one thing that has been a really juicy area that Ula and I have gone to as I've moved from feeling really, really low to now being more in a state of flat is the importance to understand that when people or us talk about feeling better, in my low points, I've really questioned why that isn't, why do we feel better? Because oftentimes we interpret these messages in the personal development, spirituality space of feeling better, feeling good, focus on the positive. We interpret that as that's where we should be. And so if we feel like shit, we're trying to get away from that. Mm-hmm. And that is an area that I have a lot of sensitivity around for many reasons, not just personally, because when we're in the ditch, we often identify with being in the ditch, and then sometimes we actually don't want to get out of the ditch. But also, as a psychologist, I know that sometimes when we are in the ditch, we're actually in a place of freezing. We're in a place of reenactment of a past trauma. And if we're not conscious of it, then we end up in this like trauma loop. And it almost feels impossible to not feel good. It feels impossible to feel good. That's what I'm trying to say. So what we have kind of pieced together, I think, really beautifully in these weeks is that, number one, the message is not that you're trying to get away from the negative feelings. The message is when you're in a low spot, number one, recognize it, accept it, maybe even get curious about it. If that feeling is there, there's a reason. And if we see our feelings as information, as Ula has said in the past, and you can become as neutral an observer of the information that is being given to you in these emotional moments, then you can receive what they're trying to tell you. And often they're telling you that you're wanting something more. You're wanting something different and you want something new. So usually we go to the default of this is what I don't like. This isn't what's working. This is what sucks. This is why it's never going to be better for me. And we don't get accustomed to another way of looking at the same exact scenario with the same emotions present on the table, which is where I know I've struggled, which is, what is this telling you about what you want more of? And then how do you make room for that? So if we are in a state, and this was really a lived experience of me every single day defaulting back to what's not working, defaulting back to how shitty I felt, defaulting back to I can't even see how things are going to work out. So I just was letting go more of things that I actually wanted in my life, energetically, right? I was like ready to just release and be like, fuck it, I'm done. When that happens, remember that you're in a particular perspective. You are in a particular lens of emotion. And if better feeling then isn't about, let me mask that up, let me pretend everything's happy, lucky, and I'm joyful. It's about, how do I become more neutral in observing the space that I'm in right now? That neutrality, what we can call flat, right, gives you enough breathing room to look at your scenario and then get curious about it. Has this come up in the past? Have I repeated this cycle in other situations, in other moments of my life? What is it telling me that I desire? And if I keep saying what I don't want, what is the opposite of that tells me what I do want? What would it be like if I actually received that? Can I feel good about it? Ula, how many times did you try doing this with me daily?
Many?
Yeah. And how successful was it with me in those worst feeling spots?
Oh, no. It's just not good.
Not good. No.
Not good. No.
And Ula tried so many ways, and then I got mad at Ula once because of the ways she wasn't trying, and how that's another example of how things aren't working out. But what I love about Ula and I, which is the takeaway for all of you listening, Ula was persistent in showing up for me every single day with a lot of love. Even as shitty as I was, honey, right? Like even as if I was pushing away your love and I was pushing away love from everybody else, you still showed up in a neutral, loving space, because that's the magic of Ula. Like you didn't get sucked into the ditch with me, and you didn't identify me through the shit that I was feeling. You were able to hold a very loving, non-judgmental, accepting space for me. This is what we want you to do for yourself, because in Ula providing that for me, I was reminded that this is actually the invitation, is how do I provide that loving, open, curious, non-judgmental space for myself in the midst of feeling all of this heaviness. And that, you guys, can only happen when we give ourselves grace. And grace is taking a deep fucking breath. Grace is buying the fucking ice cream and eating it while you watch Netflix. Grace is writing out or journaling out everything that's in your heart. Grace is letting yourself go to the worst case scenario and feeling the worst case feelings around it. But then giving yourself the permission to feel a little bit better. And what I've learned through this process is that feeling better is actually a way to regulate back to neutrality. And it's only in neutrality when we then have the option, the pure freedom to choose, am I going to see this from the perspective of it's shit? Or am I going to see this from the perspective of maybe I'm getting closer to what it is that I really desire, because this contrast is reminding me of what I really want.
And when you are able to move on to that more neutral space, you are letting go. We've been talking about letting go and allowing. Those are the words that you hear a lot in the spiritual teachings. And when you get to that flat space, that neutral space where you are allowing yourself to let go a little bit, miracles happen. And Gladys has experienced 3 freaking miracles back to back to back. And they're not even miracles, because they none of it was possible to her. None of it. It was all closed doors. This is never going to happen. And then she got satted out. That was our last episode. She was just totally satted out. There was no sadness left in her. So she was able to let go and allow those miracles in. And I mean, they happened so easily. They just showed up. And I mean, literally, they were all 3 completely closed doors. Or that's what she had decided, that they're closed doors, but they were not.
No. And you guys, this, for me, what makes me so emotional about it now, that this is all about how willing are you to believe that you actually are really loved and supported in life.
Mm-hmm.
How willing are you to believe that? And then once you believe it, because you're willing, how willing are you to know that life is always working out for you? Because there's a huge difference between believing and knowing. And Ula, you live in the knowing that you are deeply supported and loved. You never question it. And even when shit hits the fan, because you know you are deeply supported and loved, it's okay, you can move through this moment. When we believe that life is working out for us and that we are loved and supported, it can feel a little bit like a roller coaster at times. When life gets hard, that belief gets a little bit shaky. And we want to believe more, but we're seeing what's happening inside of us, and we're unsure. Mm-hmm. And so it's emotional, right? There's more of an emotional component to it. And then trusting that life is working out for us with that's just a head exercise. I mean, that is really just a mental thing that easily is dependent on what evidence you see inside of you. Hold on. Stop. Take that out, please.
No, I'm going to make a separate recording of that. It's just your voice saying stop, and I'm going to send it to you. Maybe
that's the gift for all of this. Here I am telling Lovebug to stop barking so I can keep recording, but really the message is for all of us to stop. Stop. Just stop. And in this stopping, notice. Just notice what you're doing. Notice what you're feeling. Notice how you are beating yourself up if you're doing that. Notice how you're in a loop if you're in a loop. But by noticing, stopping and noticing, thank you, Lovebug. You'll see if somebody's at your fucking front door instead of like being drowning in the ditch, which is exactly what happened. I think somebody might have left something outside for me. You'll see things that you weren't able to see before because your head is now not in the murkiness of whatever situation's going on. And so after I got satted out, right, and these miracles started to happen, yesterday was the first day when I started to feel more open. And it's the feeling open that allows not only you to have more grace to yourself, but it allows you to recalibrate after being in a really like tough spot. And that recalibration, your nervous system needs it. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise you're going to stay in like a fight or flight or freeze state. Your brain needs it to get out of those like constant loops of dialogue that you're having in your head, and your heart needs it just to feel like all is good, right? That you're going to be okay. And that is when, as soon as you shift your energy, you guys, this is what happened yesterday. Two things magic. I think it was yesterday. Two miracles happened yesterday, but the only thing that shifted was my energy. And you guys, I wasn't in a happy state. It wasn't like everything was beautiful. I just got to flat, and flat was better than being in a ditch.
Mm-hmm. And it's, I love that you talk about the trust, belief, and knowing how it moves from head to your emotion, and then knowing it just, you don't even think about it. But even a more concrete example of this, that when you're trusting somebody and you somebody or something, thanks Elle for that. If you trust in the mode of trust and it's all in your head, yes, our brain is, collector and emitting energy and magnets or magnetism. I can't.
It's very eloquent, honey. Yeah. I liked it.
So your brain, both your brain and your emotions are energy and magnetic. So they emit both. But your emotions are 5,000 times more potent and stronger than your brain.
Than your thoughts.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like the thoughts that you keep thinking. Now you can shift the thoughts from what you keep thinking into very powerful emotional thoughts, meaning that they are from the place of your desire, and those are 5,000 times stronger and more potent. And I think a good way to put it also is that, like, the things that we keep thinking, like the difference between thinking something that you are used to is basically just keep repeating the same old narrative in your mind. What happened yesterday? Who said this? They did that. And basically you're just telling your old stories, what happened before. And you're not adding to, or you're not expanding your thoughts at all. Versus when you start thinking purposely, and I've said this in a lot of episodes, that people are lazy thinkers. We don't want to move out of the place we've been stuck to for so long. We don't want to move on to like think something that, what is it that I really want? What is it that is the deepest desire in my heart? And I want to focus on that. What is it that I want? Because we're very quick to know what we don't want. And that's great. You need to know. That's why you need all these emotions. And that's why it's information. You need to know what you don't want so that you can know what you do want. But our focus very quickly goes back to what it is that we don't want. Like one good example is when, like right now in New Orleans, things are kind of dry because it's winter and it doesn't rain. And a lot of people focus on how dry it is. Oh, I really want rain because it's so dry and the trees look dead and this and that. I'm like, okay, that's great. But you're focusing on what it is that you don't want. You don't want the dryness. You don't want the dead trees. What is the opposite of that? the fresh smell of rain. Things like that. It's very subtle little things, but that changes because your emotion behind the fresh scent of rain and how lost things look, it is more of an emotion than your old thinking that, well, everything looks like shit because it's so dry.
So I think what gets hard is that when you are in a ditch and you're feeling all those emotions that feel very hard to get through, that question of what do I want is such a loaded question because we don't know. We know what we don't want, which is super clear, right? And that in itself becomes like the only thing that we keep focusing on. We don't want this, we don't want that. But to actually allow ourselves to feel into what we want in that moment when it's so shitty, that's really fucking hard because we don't know what's actually possible for us because we keep feeling that things have not been possible for us and things aren't working out. And so this is why it's a delicate balance of being able to know yourself enough and know what helps you ease up the tension. Okay, so not even like dreaming, desiring, none of that. Because I think anytime that Ula and I tried that of like, well, what do you want? I defaulted harder into staying in my ditch because what was not being, I think, acknowledged within me was how bad I felt. And I think at one point I had to say that to you, honey, right? Like, actually, like what if that was asked? Like, how's your heart feeling, right? What if somebody came and actually said, what's this experience like for you? Often we stay in a ditch because we are needing to feel seen in the ditch. We want to feel validated that someone knows, that we are suffering. But we look for that someone outside of ourselves constantly, right? Whether it's a friend or a family member or something. And then in some ways we end up putting this expectation that until I get this externally, this validation, I'm not going to be able to get out. Like somehow your salvation is going to happen outside of you. Somebody's going to come rescue you. Something is going to take away all of this. But we don't realize that all that taking away and rescuing and saving is us choosing to feel a little bit better. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean your issue of hardship or suffering goes away. It means that while you feel, and you said this to me, honey, like while you feel shitty, you can also feel ease. Mm-hmm. While you feel shitty, you can also feel flat. While you feel shitty, you can feel curious. And when you realize that you are that masterful and that expansive as a human being, that you can feel more than one thing at the same time. I don't know why we've limited ourselves to just one feeling and that becomes our identity. Then it's like, oh, okay, I feel really shitty about this scenario in my life, but I can have a good day. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened yesterday, honey, right? Like I think when you said it to me in a text, it was like, oh, this doesn't take away from my suffering. It doesn't take away from me feeling like I need to be seen and validated. And maybe how I need to be seen and validated can happen differently than how I've been waiting for it. Mm-hmm. By me using my voice, me saying, I'm hurting right now, right? I'm having a hard time right now. Or having a conversation with somebody to clear the air around something that you're mulling over in your brain. But if you come from the place of, well, I had a better feeling day, or I had a flat day, which was better than having a shit day, you're actually going to open up space to have more solutions come in for you. And this is the part that I don't think we trust or believe or know, is that solutions are always available. Always. They're already there. But your access to them is 100% dependent on whether your level of receptivity. And your level of receptivity is all about how energetically open you are to receiving them, which is all linked to how much resistance are you in based on how you're feeling. So they're all connected, but they all go back to our energy being open or closed off to receiving more of the support that's already available to us.
Mm-hmm. And it's, I want to add to your being seen in the ditch, that often when you are in that ditch and you push that power outside of yourself to something or somebody else for them to see you there and come and rescue from there, when that doesn't happen, because that's your expectation, when that doesn't happen, you also put blame on them. And what happens in that is that you're just adding to your own shittiness, because most likely that other person doesn't even know you're in the ditch. So then you just feel even more shitty. So catching yourself and realizing that, why am I needing outside validation for this? And how, why does it have to show up exactly the way I had decided? Is there another way? If you can just catch yourself on that, even that is going to feel better than adding on to, because I promise you, after you add blame to that pile of shit, you're going to find something else to add in there. And it just keeps going further and further down.
And that's, I mean, that's where I went. Totally went there, right? And then because I am such an overthinker and then I want to be balanced in my thinking, then the blame ends up pointing back to me, that I'm the one that shouldn't be feeling this way. And the vicious cycle continues with a lot of self-blame, beating yourself up, feeling even worse, feeling like you're fucking things up. So everything, and this is one of the hard, I'm not even going to say it. Never mind. Because it's so dumb to say, like, in the minute when you feel like shit, it's like everything is just a reflection of you. It ends up being fodder for you to believe that it's your fault. Which is why I don't want to say it. So another reframe is, when you are in the worst of it and you're feeling the lowest of lows, don't be afraid to sit with it. And in the sitting with it, the more you can practice not identifying with it, right? Remembering this is a moment, remembering that your emotions are safe, all of them. They're there to give you information on what you desire. And if you can only focus on that, this is examples of what you don't want, doing an exercise, a journal exercise, like writing all the things you don't want, and then doing the literal exercise of what's the opposite of that, of what I do want. Wait, what would, like, okay, I don't want to be cold right now. What would be the opposite of that? I'm warm. I don't want to feel alone right now. What's the opposite of that? I feel supported in community. I don't want, whatever it is, it's the opposite. That mental exercise gives your brain a chance to just dump out some of the stuff that you're mulling over in your brain, but it gives you the practice of flipping the script. And that flipping of the script might not feel real to you. That's okay. Nothing felt possible to me. These 3 miracles that happened, again, as Ula said, I wasn't even contemplating that they could come my way, because I had been told the door was shut. And so I moved about my business to being like, there's another example of another door shut. There's another example of another door shut. So this door's just going to shut over here, even though it's wide open. And I'm going to shut the door on this person when they're coming to me, because all doors are shut right now. Right. And so by giving yourself that grace, again, you can just be in a place of stopping. Just stop. Stop and notice. And in the stopping and noticing, that is where you can then put in some practices to help you feel a little bit of relief. And that little bit of relief can be getting to that place of flat, which then is enough, you guys. It's enough to let the miracles flow in, because your energy has now shifted out of that blocked, resistant, blaming, terrible place where just energy can't flow the same way. To now, energy can flow a little bit more than it did in that other place, and boom, another solution comes by. Boom, you call the phone to create a solution with somebody, and then the line goes dead and you realize that wasn't the person to have the conversation with. You call back, you get another person, and boom, solution happens. So this is where, you guys, when we talk about being supported by your dead people, right? Knowing that the universe is always working with you, always supporting you. It's remembering this, that the solutions are always there. Your dead people are always there. Your alive people are always there wanting to support you. And maybe it's time that you're there for you. And in the best way that you can, love on yourself and learn how to love yourself in this process. I think that's one of the biggest things that I'm taking away. And you can do it in the most gentle, loving way possible. The easier it'll be next time to default back to this place of flat instead of defaulting back to the place of shit and letting in a little bit more of the magic. So thank you, honey, because you've been a huge teacher for me in learning how to do it. And I just love that through it, we also used me as like a case study to figure out where we need to fill in the gaps for our teachings.
Yes. Gladys is the guinea pig.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to remind everybody that it is okay to want different. It is okay to receive different. Because you are in charge of your own life. It doesn't matter where you are, what your situation is, you are in charge. It might seem impossible right now, but I think Gladys is like the best example ever, that the solutions are right there. If you're able to let go just a little bit to that place of flat, because the flat feels so much better than complete shit.
Mm-hmm. And in the wise words of Ula Godan, feeling better just feels better. So why not feel better?